hockey fans and Bruins fans. So they are Marshy for Brad Marchand and Bergie for Patrice Bergeron.
Excellent.
I've already shooed them off once.
Morning, everyone, or evening, everyone.
So they are Marshy for Brad Marchand and Bergie for.
Jamel, it sounds like you're messing up your times a little bit.
Oops.
The work from home thing, right?
I was in the office today, so I really have no excuse.
No, it all blends together when you work from home.
Sure does. We're live on YouTube, just so you guys know.
I did get a message from Emily. She's going to be joining us a little bit late because of some child stuff.
And I heard from Susan that she's not able to be here tonight.
Okay. Good to know who to expect then.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody ready for the 50 and 60 degree temperatures coming or what?
For sure.
I saw for inland, it's going to be 60 on Friday. I don't know about here, but.
Trying to decide if I'm going to go to the ocean or the mountains on Friday.
Yeah, I'm taking the day off too. I think I'm going to go to the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely mountains.
Yeah, I think that's what we're leaning
about
towards.
skiing together at some point.
What's that?
We talked about skiing together at some point.
Yeah, we should get out there.
There's still a long spring.
Yeah, we'll be all right. We'll get one of those dagger storms in March, I'm sure. It pisses everyone off.
Always do.
Ah!
So who are we waiting for? Chuck?
Yeah, I was just thinking. I think it's only Chuck.
Okay. Yeah, because if Susan's coming late or Susan's not coming and Emily's coming late, we're waiting on Chuck. Give him another minute and then we'll get started. Give me a chance to turn the wood stove down. Be back in a second. All righty. Might as well get going here. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody's staying healthy and getting shots as they become available, if that's your thing. All right, let's see here. I'm using a new computer today, so hopefully I won't slow us down too much here. All right. All right, so hopefully everybody had a chance to look at our minutes from our February 8th meeting. Does anybody have any comments or clarifications on that? Thought Jamie hit the minutes pretty well with that. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes? All right, sounds like Rachel did that even though I couldn't hear her. All in favor of approving those minutes? All right. Wonderful. All right, moving on to tonight's agenda. We have a pretty full agenda, so motion to approve tonight's agenda. I'll forward that motion. We have a second. And then all in favor? All right. Knocked out the administrative stuff. Let's jump in then. I think maybe we'll do a quick, since Andrew is joining us from Scarborough Land Trust, let's do a quick introduction, a round of introductions for everybody that's on the call. So Andrew can kind of familiarize himself with who's here. Andrew, hi, I'm Pete Slavinsky, Chair of the Commission.
Hi, good evening.
Pete, do you want to do roll call, or how do you want to work this?
Sure, let's do roll call.
Do you want me to just call on people?
Yes, please.
All right.
You're
So
better
we'll
at this than I am, Jamie. Thank you.
I'm Jamie Fitch, the Town Sustainability Coordinator. We'll go to Rachel.
Here.
You want to just say who you are too, so that Andrew has a sense of who you are?
Sure, I'm Rachel Hendrickson. I'm trying to find out if you can hear me okay.
We can now.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have been on the, I've just got a notice that my internet connection is unstable. I've been on this commission for, I think, at least 5 years, maybe a little longer. I'm also on the Parks and Conservation Land Board, the Planning Board, and the Long Range Planning Committee.
Thanks, Rachel. We'll go to Chuck next.
I'm Chuck Spanger, Beach Ridge Road. I've been on the commission for maybe 4 years. Yeah. How about you, Randy?
Perfect.
Thanks, hi, Andrew. Randy Hogan. I am a brand new member of this commission, and I can walk to Libby Trail and enjoy that property a great deal. I will pop it to Noah.
Hi, Andrew. I, like Randy, am a brand new member, second meeting.
We'll go to Jamel.
Hey there, Jamel Torres. I'm the Assistant Town Planner in the Planning Department here in town. Nice to meet you.
And John Clucci.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for coming. I'm the Town Council Liaison.
Great.
All right. I think that's all of us.
Yeah, awesome. So that's roll call and introductions. And then Andrew, just real quick, I think I joined the commission in 2007 when I moved to Scarborough. So been here for a while. And I live right in Pleasant Hill area. So I enjoy Benjamin Farm quite a bit.
Okay.
And was involved in helping raise funds for that. So, all right. Do you want to take the stage and tell us a little bit about joining Scarborough Land Trust and what's going on?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me tonight and letting me introduce myself. I started in November at the Scarborough Land Trust, so I'm pretty new. Been thrown right in, so have lots going on. We're just in the process of hiring a office manager now, so hopefully we'll extend an offer by the end of the week, which if that goes well and I get them on board and trained, then I can get some of the bookkeeping and letter writing and all that off my plate, focus on some other things. So that would be great when that happens. I am originally from New York State. I grew up in the Hudson Valley, not too far away, and lived in upstate New York and Albany and Syracuse on the Tug Hill Plateau, and then out in Western New York. In a small town called Geneseo. So I know the Northeast pretty well. I spent 2 years in Connecticut, and I've traveled extensively in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. But then during my career, I started with the National Audubon Society on the Hudson River and then moved to Southwest Florida. So I spent 7 years in Florida. In the heat and very different from this climate. But then came back to New York State and Albany, and then after a short break at graduate school, I went out to Colorado And so really for the last 11 years, I was the executive director of a land trust out there called the Central Colorado Conservancy. If anyone's been to town of Salida or Buena Vista, that was our area. And if you haven't, you try to get out there at some point. It's beautiful, the upper Arkansas Valley. I was looking for a change, so I decided to come back east, and I ended up here. Really excited. Just have a fantastic board of directors, and you probably know many of them. And I'm really looking forward to working with them and our stewardship director, Samantha Wolf, that some of you might know already too. And so that's a little bit about me. Be happy to answer any questions. And then Pete, do you want me to talk a little bit about what the land trust has going on? And
Yeah, I think that would be great. I mean, we've always kind of played around with the idea of some overlap between, I mean, some towns, the commission, their conservation commissions kind of serve as land trusts, and in other towns, land trusts kind of serve as conservation commissions. So it's kind of an interesting overlap that Scarborough has a land trust and a conservation commission. So it'd be nice to, just hear what's going on and maybe some of the key near-term projects, if you can share them, that might be of interest for the land trust. And I know there's a lot of overlap, with Eastern Trail Alliance and all kinds of other organizations that are in town that aren't necessarily, specifically related to the town itself.
All right. So Scarborough Land Trust does partner with a lot of organizations. We work closely with the Friends of Scarborough Marsh. We've worked with the Eastern Trail Alliance and Maine Audubon. And of course, we work very closely with the town of Scarborough and have a very long running relationship with the town in terms of the land bond and partnering on projects. And hopefully we'll even do more of that in the future. It's a real priority of mine to create those partnerships. As I said, I'm still kind of getting my feet settled a little bit. But definitely one of our priorities going forward is land protection, and even trying to pick up the pace of land protection in Scarborough. Exactly what that looks like, I can't tell you yet. But we are focused on trying to develop priorities for the land trust. And we've, through the comprehensive plan process with the town, we have actually offered to help the town also take the next step from the comprehensive planning and kind of create more specific priorities related around some of the natural resource protection and other vision statements that are in the plan. I call that in our comments to the town kind of a green space plan. But either way, Scarborough Land Trust will be focusing on what our priorities are in terms of kind of regional conservation planning, figuring out what is kind of our highest priorities in terms of adding to some of the existing properties, creating corridors between some of our existing properties, protecting the river corridors, providing access in places maybe that doesn't have much right now. Of course, watershed protection, protecting farmland is a high priority. It has been a high priority of ours. So those are kind of some of the things that we're looking at. We do have, and I can't share a lot of details because this is these are active discussions. But we are working on several parcels to add to Warren Woods. And we hope to have some of those done in about a year's time. And so again, trying to add both some ecologically significant lands to that preserve, but potentially some other access points too. So you might be able to access Warren Woods instead of just on Payne Road from some other places. Let's see what else. So another huge priority of ours, of course, is stewardship and management of our current properties. But I also think that goes larger and acting as a resource to help steward and manage other public lands and also private lands, and bringing whatever expertise we can to that. And I really hope that's an area too where we can work very closely with the town and provide some assistance and support for the town to help manage some of their properties, both from a public access and a natural resource protection standpoint. Our last kind of major focus area is education. And we are working on increasing our educational offerings and outreach to the community. I think, you know, our priority is to get people out on the land, to connect them to the natural and agricultural world. So that's what our focus is going to be, either for the most part, probably on our properties, but definitely encouraging everything we do to kind of drive people to get connected to those systems and get out there and experience them. How are we going to do some of this? Well, the first thing that we're going to be taking on later this year is a strategic planning process for the organization. Our strategic plan is quite old and quite ready to be updated and kind of revised to meet the current times. And so we'll be spending some effort getting the organization in that process, and also we'll be reaching out hopefully to our partners and the community to gather input about where we might go in the future. And so I would say right now, I'm not limiting options. I want to keep everything open. And really, one of the things that I stress with the board of directors is that we have to be responsive to our community. And as the community changes and as times change, the land trust needs to change with that. And so that's some of the things we're going to be doing. We are working on updating some of our signage at our properties, kind of clarifying some of the things that can and can't happen. Also trying to be a little more welcoming in terms of making sure people understand what the property is, what safety considerations are, things like that. We are working on 5 educational or interpretive panels for Pleasant Hill, which will be kind of our first test run at doing kind of more educational signage out on the properties. And we are also working on either updating or actually establishing management plans for all our properties. So that's kind of a quick overview.
That's great, Andrew. I have a couple quick thoughts and questions.
Sure.
And I think we have some, yeah, we do have time. A number of years ago, the commission was actively involved in kind of developing some information related to the towns. And this is also a thought/comment for Jamie and Jamel, for the town's transfer of development rights program, which never really took off. And I just didn't know what relationship the land trust has with the town in terms of doing anything with TDR, and whether or not we have enough development opportunities occurring. This goes more to Jamel, into some of those sending areas where we might want to think about kind of revisiting TDR. We actually developed a brochure. The commission actually developed a brochure and background information on transfer of development rights in Scarborough. So that's number one. number 2, let me get back to my notes again. This is the first time I'm using this computer. The commission a number of years ago, I think a couple of you were on the commission at that point. We actually visited a number of town-owned land properties, and actually walked them and came up with just kind of some very, very general strategies for managing those properties for the town. So that might be useful for the land trust to maybe have some of that information. And in general, we basically said, you know, these properties are good to be kept as is, certainly not developed. But there might be some opportunities to revisit those properties. There was a list, I think, of about 5 or 10 that we actually visited out of, I think, 20 some municipal properties that were owned. So there's two quick thoughts that I have. And anybody else, please jump in or.
I can jump in about the TDR program real quick. Happy to sit down with you, Andrew, to discuss the ordinance. It's typically a developer-initiated request for folks looking for denser development than is allowed. Definitely a great program. I haven't had the opportunity to use it in my 3 years here in Scarborough, but it's definitely a good opportunity for transferring growth into the areas where most folks would like to see it. So we could definitely chat offline if you'd like about it sometime.
I will just mention, I was part of a county-wide process in Florida to create a TDR program in Collier County. It was a pretty massive undertaking at the time. And there was actually 2 areas, what we called the rural fringe and then the rural area of the county, and creating that transfer of development rights. And you know, one of the things that we did have a problem with is, you know, since it's a market-driven system, the developers have to want that increase in density, and that's not always where the market goes. And especially that was true in Florida, where people wanted more single-family residential on lots, not always large lots, but and so that's what the developers wanted to provide. And so that was kind of a little bit of a stumbling block we had to get across, and had some success with it, protecting fairly large tracts for things like Florida panther and Florida black bear and wood stork.
Yeah, the only reason I brought it up is because, I mean, it seems to me like a really good program, and it seems to be relatively underutilized and probably even unknown to an extent. In Scarborough, a number of years ago, we did a mass mailing of this brochure to a number of property owners in the sending area. That I'd have to ask Jay. Jay Chase. I don't know what kind of response we got. I don't remember. It was so long ago. But it seems to me like, given how fast Scarborough is developing, and given, you know, the not renewed, but increased interest in development in Scarborough, given the pandemic, it might be something we might want to revisit as a commission and also as a town, and work a little bit more to see if that program can actually become something that is usable. Because one of the holdups was it seemed like it should become like a regional program with some of the adjacent towns as well. But I don't know if that's something that we should wait for to try to pursue regionally, or just focus on it. I mean, we have our comprehensive plan, and we have these areas that we've designated, and it seems to me like it's an underutilized program, basically.
Okay.
Pete, do you still have that brochure?
I'm pretty sure it's on our website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on. I think it's on the Scarborough Conservation Commission website. It used to be. I'm imagining it still is. But John, we can certainly send you a copy. If not, or send you a link.
Yeah, I think Jay knows where it is. We were looking at it a couple years ago when there was discussion of raising the development transfer in Luffy to keep it in line with the affordable housing in Luffy as well, if I'm remembering correctly.
Hey, Andrew, Noah here. Thanks for your remarks. It's nice to hear about your background and your interests. I particularly like hearing you talk about wood storks and mountain lions in Florida. So, I mean, even though you're relatively new here, I mean, driving down the street in Scarborough, in Old Orchard, in Saco, in Gorham, you can see in all of our towns, there's just a land grab going on right now with development. It's hard to drive anywhere and not see 60 acres with a huge sign on it for sale for lots. And so to me, that really raises the stakes and the urgency of the work that you all do. And you know, and I guess likewise, I live right on the Eastern Trail, and I actually have a research project on the Eastern Trail, and I'm friends with the new executive director there. And we've talked a lot about the increasing demand on the trail and just how this pandemic has shown the value of these public lands to these trails. And so, so I'm saying this in that I'm personally really feeling an urgency to go big, honestly, that in terms of land conservation in Scarborough, before so many of these parcels, 60-acre parcels, 20-acre parcels, whatever, turn into houses. And so I guess my point here is that I really want to encourage you to go big in land conservation. And you know, and I will do, and to please come to us. And I guess I can only speak for myself in support of big ideas that you can come up with and creative ideas to go big, because we really need it. We need it desperately. These are long-term changes. They're not long-term changes. They're long-term investments in our community, and it makes it a better place to live.
Great. Well, thank you for that.
Does the comprehensive plan call for expansive efforts by the land trust?
The draft comprehensive plan right now is a very kind of general document. That's the way it was drafted, and it lays out visions, but it doesn't necessarily say how to get to those visions. And that's why I was, in our comments, we said that's absolutely fantastic, but you know, the next step then is to take those vision statements and really get specific and say, what are your strategies to get there? Who's going to do the work? What do you need to do it? And that's what I was calling a green space plan. So that's what I'm proposing as the next step.
My next question is the Pest Management Committee has been, this talk of their joining with our committee. It's been observed by us and members of that committee that their work has been focused on town land, but I don't believe that includes the land trust lands, which are significant. You know, the efforts to do best land practices and organic practices on the town fields and so forth. It's a piddly little effort. It doesn't amount to much. It's really kind of symbolic. It doesn't represent the community, and it isn't very impactful in terms of change. So is there a relationship or a plan for those kinds of practices, or is that automatic within the land trust agenda?
Well, we have a very active land management program. You know, we are not maintaining manicured lawns and things like that, ball fields.
Right, I know that.
Do require, you know, different practices. But we do have a very active invasive species management program. And we are proceeding with that without the use of chemicals, without the use of herbicides. That's not always easy with invasive species. But that's the direction that we've decided to take. And I think you will see us not only in that area, but in other land management practices, trying to do what I call more technical education. So actually hosting workshops and programs for landowners, private landowners, whoever it is, golf course managers, anyone who might be out doing these things on their lands, and trying to get across some of those best practices. So I think that part is in our future.
I have one more question. When you were out in the Hudson Valley, did you know Pete Seeger?
I never did know Pete. A lot of people I knew did. And he would do a lot of events for environmental and conservation organizations in the Valley. But our paths just never crossed. I knew some other folks, I'm trying to think of, well, probably some people, unless you were really active, Bob Boyle, who was very famous president of the Hudson River Fishermen's Association, John Cronin, who was the original Hudson River keeper, Robert Kennedy Jr., who was their attorney at the time. But I never did get to meet Pete.
Thanks.
Yeah, Andrew, first of all, the Parks and Conservation Land Board has been called together to meet, and we start meeting tomorrow. So I believe there's some sort of a project coming before us. But also in terms of what the planning board is seeing, we are seeing developers with an interest on much more density development. That's both in terms of townhouses, apartment buildings, but also smaller family houses, individual houses. So there is an appetite out there for more high density in Scarborough. And from what I understand is basically the houses are sold before the land is cleared to get the street in. So there is a lot of that sort of activity going on out there.
All right. Well, thank you.
Rachel, is there any requirement for greater density or within the town as opposed to a developer who just wants to build a sprawling suburb? Do they all have equal access?
There's no requirement per se, but the conservation developments essentially require a lot of green space and the houses closer together. There is in the comp plan, and I can't precisely remember it, but there is some encouragement for infill activities. So where there are some spaces left in developments, that might be the place to build them, to start building, rather than to open up a whole new development area. So that's all I know. We've got the Sawyer cottages at Sawyer that are going in a lot at the Downs. It's all small. All of the Downs is going to be much higher density, and folks want to live there.
So, Andrew, thanks again for coming and welcome on board.
Thank you.
I want to, picking up on what Rachel just said, I'd like to echo what Noah said and encourage that you and your collaborators with other organizations keep up the pace of land conservation, on pace with development that's happening. It's what you're doing and what your peers are doing are indeed what makes Scarborough such a great place to live, a beautiful place to be, and very special. So keep let us know how we can help you.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, may I ask one more question before we definitely have to move on? What Scarborough many times, Andrew, as you're aware, has overwhelmingly always voted for appropriate funds to support land acquisition in town. Do we have after the Benjamin Farm purchase? I don't know what happened to the overall funds. I mean, also Jamie and Jamel. Or maybe Rachel knows the answer. Do we know what the status of those overall funds are?
The status, we ran down the last of the original funds for the Blue Point Preserve. That was, I think we had 99,000 left, something like that. And then there was a bond issue or a referendum that John Clucci, Councilor Clucci, you probably know the amount better than I do. I think it ended up at $2 million. But I'm not sure if that was the amount. I know we were looking for 2.5.
I thought it was 2.5. But
was it?
we used it to purchase the Masonic Hall. So there are some funds are already earmarked from it.
Okay. But basically about we're starting essentially fresh except for the Masonic Hall.
Great, thanks. Thanks.
So
everyone.
John, do you think it's exhausted right now, or do you think that there is a
No, there's
fair amount
about 2 million, a little over 2 million available.
remaining after the purchase of the Masonic Hall?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Andrew, that gives you something to work with.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that check tonight. I'll put it to good use. But no, we're coming in front of the Conservation Land Board pretty soon. I think next week that we start the proposal process.
Thursday.
That
I think it was Thursday that we've got 3 meetings ahead of us.
Yeah, the first
Tomorrow,
meeting we're not
Thursday
at.
and next week.
The first meeting is just the board, and then we come to the second.
All right. Any other questions for Andrew before we move on? All right. Well, Andrew, you're welcome to stick with us if you'd like, or if you want to hop off, that's fine too. The beauty of these virtual meetings, you can leave discreetly.
Well, thank you very much. I'll stay for a while. I do have another Zoom call actually at 8, so at some point I'll get off and prepare for that.
Hopefully we'll be done before then.
So.
That's the goal. All right.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it. Moving on to old business. Jamie, you want to give us an update on the committee consolidation, which is pretty simple update?
Pretty simple. Seems like things are not going to move forward at this time. So have heard back from a couple of different department heads that the process to consolidate with the Pest Management Advisory Committee isn't as much of a priority now as it was a few weeks ago, a few months ago. So at this point, we won't be moving forward, but we will work on learning how we might be able to integrate or partner more closely with the Pest Management Advisory Committee as we may need to, or have overlapping priorities, things like that. Just look for opportunities to work with them. So that's the non-update update on that.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments related to that from anyone?
Are there any consolidations happening across the town? Without going into any great detail?
I don't know if there are other committees. I had the impression that there are other committees that were being asked to consider consolidation, but I don't know where the process is for those others. All right.
Great, thanks. Green Bank.
So just a quick update on my end, Chuck. I don't know if you have anything to share. I have not seen bill language released yet. So I think that this is still on hold until we have some language to look at. And Chuck, you had mentioned that you might have draft language that you could share. Do you know if that's available?
I don't have it.
Okay.
I've got some old draft language, but I don't have, well, I guess that's draft language, isn't it? Yeah. But it hasn't been changed.
Okay.
That's a change.
And as part of follow-up from our last meeting, I did reach out to Stacy Brenner to ask her to come to one of our meetings. I have to follow up with her because I haven't heard anything, but I haven't had a chance to do that. But the initial outreach has been done, and I will follow up.
Thanks, Jamie.
Sure.
And that ties into the kind of the next topic, which is the climate action planning. Jamie sent around a really well-written article which kind of summarized if you haven't had a chance to dig into the Maine Won't Wait climate report, kind of has a good summary of how, there's a lot of good language in the Maine Won't Wait report, but there's a lot of, I'll call it almost unfunded mandates, not mandate, but unfunded
goals.
Yeah, unfunded goals, with a lot of the onus falling on the communities. And so I don't know where we want to go with that conversation per se, except what is the town thinking in terms of, pursuing some of the Maine Won't Wait goals or building off of climate. We talked about the flood resiliency checklist last time, which we completed, and digging into that and recommendations from that and trying to tie it to some of the Maine Won't Wait stuff and seeing how we might want to move forward. Any thoughts on that?
I will share also that we recently learned from Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission that they received a grant to develop a coastal resilience plan that will span the 10 southernmost municipalities, which is Kittery to Scarborough. So that process is going to be starting this spring, just waiting to get information from them about kickoff and what our role will be. We provided a letter of support for that grant proposal so that we will be participating, but high level, they're looking to assess the impacts to the coast, address regional resilience needs, develop adaptation strategies, and nature-based solutions for our changing coastline. I take nature-based solutions to mean opportunities for living shorelines and things like that to increase our coastal resilience and ability to adapt to our increases and storm surge and sea level rise. So that's kind of high level. Certainly they'll be looking for the town's participation, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for the Conservation Commission to provide input into that as well.
Yeah, we'll be able to feed them. I mean, I think Abby Sherwin is the lead on that grant, or maybe the sustainability coordinator over there is, but she's also the one that completed the checklist with the town. So there's something that we already have to provide. Do we know what role GPCOG is playing in this at all, since they're kind of our, we're Cumberland County and
we kind of we're members of both GPCOG and Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission. So we straddle both.
Okay, good.
So I haven't heard that GPCOG has a role in that. That doesn't mean that they don't. I just haven't heard.
Okay.
Will there be some sort of an advisory committee or council with reps from each town as this gets going, or is it?
It does sound like there will be some sort of steering committee or advisory committee. Like I said, I reached out to Abby for more details because I had only heard that the grant was received and didn't have a whole lot. She said that she's working on pulling together a one-page summary and hoping for a kickoff in the next couple months. It will get underway this spring. So that'll be something good. I think I'm hoping that we'll have some more in-depth recommendations that come out of that we might be able to kind of rally around and prioritize as part of the commission's work.
So not to harp on this topic, but one of the things that in my mind is, I mean, there's such a there's such a big, we're still in the process of completing our comprehensive plan. I don't know what year we're on now, but there's such a heavy focus in a lot of the recommendations from the Climate Council on integration of climate action into comprehensive planning. And the question kind of that I have is do we actually have enough in our comprehensive plan to kind of reflect, the wishes and recommendations of the Climate Council, or are we basically going to have to not start from scratch again, but at least fill in more blanks based on, a lot of the new stuff that's come about since the time that we've not dawdled, but you know what I mean. Taken a long time to get our comprehensive plan done.
Pete, do you know if the Energy Committee is also working on this or discussing this?
I don't, but I imagine they are. Chuck dropped off. Chuck's a little bit into there, but Jamie also probably could provide some information on that.
Yeah, I'm the staff liaison for the Sustainability Committee, which was formerly the Energy Committee. And so they are looking into kind of priorities in the climate action plan. Their main focus right now is on developing an ordinance to allow utility scale solar in Scarborough. So that is kind of the chunk that they're biting off right now, and trying to update our ordinances to allow that, which is consistent with a recommendation in the draft comp plan, to update ordinances to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency. So that is their focus at this point. And once we kind of I would say we're maybe a third to a halfway through that process. We've gone through the Sustainability Committee a few times. Long Range Planning Committee has seen it, just reached out to have the Ordinance Committee get it on their upcoming agenda as well. So it'll have to go through Ordinance Committee a couple times and the council a couple times. So hopefully late spring, early summer, that process will be complete and they'll move on to another climate related action to tackle.
So in relation to that question, do we have a sense of an updated timeline on the town's comprehensive plan actually being completed? Or are we kind of revisiting sections of it based on some of these new recommendations coming out from the council?
So I believe I'm close on this, but I believe it's been passed off to GPCOG for final review.
Yeah.
I say final review, and I haven't seen the latest version yet. It's going through that process, and then it'll be provided to council to start our process. So I guess I'd say if there's significant revisions that you'd like to see, point them out. There'll still be an opportunity for public comment. I don't think we want to drag it out too far though, because it's been going on for a number of years already. I guess you have to weigh the benefits of what you're looking to get added in, if it's simple as possible.
Yeah, John's right on in terms of the timeline. It has gone to GPCOG. I think the plan, I don't want to use the term vague, but the plan is non-specific enough that a lot can be done under it. So in other words, rather than limit ourselves by having very specific activities that kind of had to be followed, it allows for the flexibility to meet changing needs. I guess that's the way I would put what it kind of looks like now. Jamel,
that's a good way of putting it, Rachel.
Yeah.
I'm always torn on that though. I know that's where we always end up. I'm always torn on that though, because then if we go back, 10 years from now and look at what we've achieved, we don't have anything really written in stone of what we wanted, what we were trying to achieve. We have a gray area that we kind of described that we might want to get to. So
Well, and I think it sets out, as Andrew alluded to earlier, kind of the goals or the vision statements, but it leaves a lot of flexibility for how we get there. And so I think climate and resiliency is in there, but it doesn't tell us how to improve our situation, just that we need to take steps to think about sea level rise, climate change, and things like that.
Yeah, the vision is pretty clear. The visions are pretty clear. I can't remember how many we had.
I think 7.
Yeah, I was going to say 7. It was 5 or 7.
Mhm.
And how we get there is really the next stage of planning. How we choose to get to achieve those visions is the next stage of the work, as I would see it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it was nice to be able, as a commission, to be able to have, pretty significant input into that section, as it related to, some of the thing, some of those goals and some of those recommendations.
Given that it's, it's in progress, it's not yet complete, but we know sort of the general broad areas. We just talked about how we don't want to get too prescriptive in the plan itself, the comprehensive plan itself, about our work. Could we start now, in any case, to define specific goals that we want, understanding that they're all going to fit in? So we don't need to wait for the comprehensive plan to be complete to match that up.
I think that's a really good point, Randy. And if we, part of our discussion last month, I think kind of was to take a closer look at the flood resilience checklist and some of the specific recommendations from that, and see if there were some things we wanted to pull out of there and start talking about again and tackling, because there's a lot of stuff that Abby Sherman pulled together in that document that I think would be very, very beneficial for the town to start talking about and focusing on. And I think, like, exactly what you said, we don't have to, we don't have to wait to actually start doing some of those things and plugging, or, start digging a little bit further into some of those topics. So maybe one of the things for next time is to kind of take a closer look at that and distill some of the main points from the checklist, which could be some things that and maybe think about how we expand that to tackle some of the other issues that have come up since we completed the checklist, which was probably 3 years ago now.
Almost 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we take a look at the minutes under the new business, we did outline some things that we could do next. And I want to take this opportunity also to thank Jamie for the work she did on the minutes. It was very helpful, Jamie, when you had in the minutes a call out for what the action was, so that we could be reminded what we were supposed to be doing, what we had promised to do. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It looks like Emily has joined. Hey, Emily.
Hi, sorry I'm late. Thank you.
Anything else on climate action planning?
We'll continue the conversation.
Definitely.
I guess I would like to say, if we're to continue the conversation, that maybe I'd like to request that we do it in a more pointed way,
Mm-hmm.
with assignments. I mean, I appreciate the spirit of what we're talking about, but we're not really coming down with directives, a specific directive, like, okay, let's look at this. So let's focus on this component of it. I mean, if that document was produced 2.5 years ago, I would hope that we can focus on something right now that we can, for our next meeting, some component to it. So I'd like to not just move on and say, let's keep talking about it without a particular point.
So do we want to set for our next meeting to actually dig? Why don't we set for our next meeting to actually dig into those recommendations and come out with actionable items for us to work on?
one of the things that, again, in the minutes, that the staff was going to review some of that and let us know what we had accomplished in the last couple of years so that we could say, okay, this we've done, let's get it out of the way. Now what do we focus on?
Yep.
Because
And
I agree, it would be nice to have something actionable to actually work on.
yep. And I will say that I didn't have a chance between last meeting and this meeting to do that, because it is going to require me to speak and meet with other folks in town, since the whole point of the flood resilience checklist was to get multiple departments together in order to better understand what everyone is doing under various both emergency and scenarios, and then just on a daily basis. So I apologize that I didn't have time to get that done before this meeting, but I will work on that for next time.
Amy, just a quick question. Do we have did we already send around to everybody what Abby pulled together for the town?
Yep, that was provided as part of the meeting information before the last meeting.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
So I would say,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, how folks, if you want to take a look at that, if you have any questions on what is in that, or if you have anything stands out to you that you would like some more information on, it would be helpful for me as I'm doing some of that follow-up. If you want to just shoot me an email so that I'm not looking into things that maybe you don't feel are necessarily as significant. If you want to try to do that within the next 2 weeks, so I have a couple of weeks to finish pulling it together, that would be helpful. And I will get working on that ahead of our next meeting.
Yeah, let's make that homework.
Yeah.
Folks, take a look. Questions. Let's get that all documented so that for our next meeting, we can actually focus on some actionable items from that list and see what we can maybe have the town think about tackling.
It'd be very helpful, Jamie, if you could just send out an email that tells us what our homework is.
I will.
Or
Yep.
what we've agreed is our homework, so that
That Noah
we've
gave
got
us.
something and we know, and reattach that checklist, because
Yep.
I'm sure I can find it, but not. I've got.
I know I can, so I will send it to
I've
you.
got a giant committee stack here.
Yeah, no problem. All right.
Great. Anything else on that? Otherwise, we'll go to updates because we're running a little bit behind schedule, but as you all know, it's kind of the way it goes.
So, John, do you have a town council update for us?
Yeah, I can be pretty brief. I mean, we've got a couple things on our plate. Most immediately is a fireworks ordinance. It was on our prior agenda to repeal, which currently we allow fireworks 4 days a year with some restrictions about where it can be. The proposal was to not allow it at all. We're kind of steering in the middle right now, looking at possibly allowing it those same 4 days if you're north of Route 1, and if you're on the coastal side of Route 1, banning it altogether. That's the compromise that we're currently leaning towards. We're going to have some language at our next meeting, and it might shift a little bit. There's not I don't have a great way to do it. It's a difficult ordinance to enforce regardless. And we're trying to strike a balance with that enforcement and giving an outlet for some people that do want to follow the rules and do enjoy doing it a very limited number of days of the year. So you can share thoughts if you have any on that with us. And they're also gearing up for growth management, which I thought that TDR discussion was very helpful, and that pamphlet was something that could help inform that discussion as well. We're going to have a workshop next Wednesday. And there's two things, or two sides of it. One is the long-term review of our growth management ordinance, and the shorter term thing is this is the first time that our growth management ordinance has actually had any real world impact, in that we're out of growth management permits for this year, and we're already well on our way to being out for next year. So if you own a parcel of land and you're looking to develop it, it's impossible to do right now unless we come up with a relief valve. So we'd also be interested in any thoughts from you guys on that. And that's all I got.
Any questions for John? I mean, I have some thoughts on the plover, or not plover, on the fireworks. Sorry, it relates to plovers.
I know, I was going to say the plovers will be very happy that you're going to possibly allow it north of Route 1.
Yeah, like to me, July, not a great idea along the beaches. The rest of the year, fine, but I'll send you some comments aside from that. Any questions for John? Planning board.
Yeah, at our last meeting,
John.
we gave an advisory opinion on the solar array proposal for EcoMaine landfill. And it was basically very enthusiastic, and it helped us think through some of the requirements, some of the options out there for how to manage the larger 4.99 kilowatt solar arrays that folks want to do around town. So it's pretty much now we've looked at the new development at the firehouse that's in its early stages. The Downs is moving along, and I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's some small projects, but basically the Downs and the Innovation District of the Downs is taking up a lot of development, and there are some very good projects going in there. So that's pretty much where we are, John. One of my suggestions would be, in terms of the development, really to take a look at infill and encourage people to build there. In other words, they can perhaps get a growth permit to build there, so that there's an incentive rather than opening up new land.
Can I ask a question about the solar work from both the planning board and Jamie, maybe your work as well? Yep. Are you all familiar with any towns or that have tried to come up with incentives that would effectively kind of offset the costs of putting solar on the ground versus the rooftop, where meaning that it makes it it's going on the ground because it's cheaper to do it on rooftop than on rooftops, right? At a large scale. And so if there was a financial mechanism to offset that financial difference, we could get more of it on the rooftop and maintain that open space rather than devoting it to solar panels. Has there been any discussion about that? Ways to encourage it on the roofs, on rooftops as much as possible prior to taking up open space?
There is a bit of encouragement in the design standards, but it's not necessarily, there's not really financial incentives. It's just developers are encouraged to orient their buildings to take advantage of solar power. The proposal for the fire station community does have solar panels on top of the proposed building. The Hospice of Maine is a green building and has put up its own solar panels. I'm trying to think if there's anything else out there. There's a few things out there, but there's no specific incentive except for ultimately saving money on electricity and being community minded and eco-conscious. That's about all that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't know of any specific municipal incentives. I will say that the EcoMaine solar array is going on a landfill, so it's a brownfill site, so it's not really taking away any open space that is usable. And there have been some studies of doing arrays in conjunction with pollinator habitat and also in conjunction with agriculture production, and it has shown that they actually can be done fairly well together and actually boost agricultural productivity. I know there's a study out of Yale, and I think one out of University of Iowa, possibly. So if the land is going to be developed, and my personal opinion is that I would rather see solar panels there than house lots. So I think a lot of it comes down to land cost and the cost of land values in Scarborough being expensive. I think a lot of this will be probably agricultural land, and we're hoping that it's not going to. We hope that it will be balanced with continuing working farmlands and solar arrays, if that's the route it takes.
And solar panels have a lifespan, and but the soil under and around a solar array is not damaged at all by the solar array, unlike a development where they take away the topsoil and they pave away and so forth. So it can be returned very easily to agricultural use.
So I totally agree with all of that for sure. And Jamie, I've actually read a bunch of those studies, and I've actually participated in my own research with field nesting birds and solar arrays in Vermont. So I have a little bit of experience with that. But I am talking about a slightly nuanced component to this, where, is there a way for us as a commission to work with the sustainability committee in encouraging rooftop arrays, large scale rooftop arrays, so that we can at the same time encourage the land trust to be conserving these parcels that are potentially available for development or kept open for open space. So you're really winning on both sides here. And I guess that's I'm trying to, encourage that type of thinking where we could maintain this habitat and open space for us and wildlife while meeting renewable energy goals.
Yeah, if there's a way to, and Jamie, if there's a way to do that, I would suggest taking a look at the Innovation District in the Downs, because if you're going to put in a 40,000 square foot building, you do have a lot of space for solar arrays on top. A small house, not so much. But as these larger industrial buildings go in there, if there's any sort of incentive opportunity, I suspect a lot of the people groups that are going in there would have an interest.
I'm not aware of developments that have oriented all their buildings to for solar orientation. Perhaps there are here in Scarborough, but I don't know. As you said, Rachel, it's not a mandate. It's an option. And there's also trees that we don't want to remove, which are an impediment to rooftop. Whereas the solar array in the field has perfect orientation and perfect day-long exposure, probably. So it's not comparing apples with oranges. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the only neighborhood that I'm familiar with in Scarborough is the Habitat for Humanity neighborhood that's on Broadturn Road, where I know a number of the buildings that they've put up were both orientated or structured for solar, and then they actually did install solar on them.
I know the sustainability committee did talk with the Downs folks about working solar readiness into their designs. We tried to get them to at least consider rooftop orientation. But I believe, and Rachel and Jamel would know better than me, that they were at least offering solar readiness for their in some of their residences, like just at least even just putting the conduit in and things like that, so that if someone decided they wanted to do solar on their own, they wouldn't have to do a lot of retrofitting, that it was already set up for that. They were offering solar packages, but it sounds like the average age or the typical age of people buying in the Downs, they wouldn't necessarily recoup their initial investment, since they were older. So it didn't seem like that was something that many people were taking advantage of.
They were doing that during the original development of the duplexes and the garden duplexes, and the big white block houses along there. And for the condos, they're putting conduits into the garages so that if people wanted to put in
Vehicle chargers,
an
right?
EV charger, they can do that. I don't think I just don't think any of the other development that's going on in the single family houses, I don't think there's any package for
Okay.
those.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. But I know one of the industrial buildings is going to have solar on top. I think it's the Car Club.
No throttle?
Yeah, I believe they had an array or two on their roof. But like you said, those buildings really do create a great opportunity.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's almost like a square footage threshold that should trigger if not consideration, then stronger language as it relates to solar use.
Yeah, we're looking at a development there in the Innovation District that I think is 40,000 square feet building. So that certainly would take a large solar array. And there are others that are possible, but there's no real push or incentive.
Well, in those arrays too, those would likely, the energy would be used first on site before it goes to the grid. And we're looking at a larger scale development than that. Is what the Sustainability Committee is looking at.
How large is it? How large is it?
What, for large scale or utility scale
Yeah.
solar?
That you're looking- Yeah.
Anywhere from 1 to 5 megawatts. So the EcoMain array is going to be 4.9 megawatts.
I think what I heard, or maybe I heard it from you, Jamie, is that 5 acres gets you 1 megawatt roughly.
Roughly.
It looks like 40,000 square feet is about 0.9 acre.
Yeah, it would be it would really be for that building, but then they're not pulling energy from the grid.
Right. And anything that is produced in excess would go to the grid.
I apologize if I've kind of derailed our conversation.
No, it's important.
I mean, it touches on one of our topics anyway, which is Sustainability Committee. So I think it's a very valid conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think we already got our update on the comprehensive plan as well. So I think we've hit the end of the agenda unless there's anything else.
Jamie, I double checked about any progress on the Green Accelerator bill, and there is no change. They're still writing the bill.
Okay.
Yeah, no new text. I provided an old text from last year, and that's all there is thus far. I mean, there's explanatory literature. There's an excellent one pager. I think you've got that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure everybody else does. Did you others get what I sent out or not?
It should have gone out with the meeting materials from February.
Great.
If anyone needs it again, though, I'm happy to resend it. But again, if we want the town to support it, we'll need to see the official language before we can take any action on that.
Yeah. Are we going to end it now? I was wondering if I could take a minute to bring up a new subject.
Yeah, Chuck. Chuck, give us a quick update on. Well, I think I know what you're going to speak about. So go ahead.
Yeah, there's a new bill in the legislature, and it's called the Maine Green Amendment. That name has been changed. The Green Amendment is a theme that's going around the country. It's called the Maine Pine Tree Amendment, and it's a change. It's an effort to change the Maine Constitution and add new specific rights to citizens, the rights to clean water, clean air, and a livable, sustainable environment. which includes stable climate and so forth. So it's a potentially tremendously impactful thing that would backstop other legislation. And it would require government, the legislature and all agencies and regulators and courts to apply those rights, not allow those rights to be abrogated. So it's for government. It's to protect us from government's inaction, unwillingness to do things, whatever. So it doesn't directly apply to business, although government regulates business. So if government isn't regulating the business in an appropriate way and they're dumping trash in our water, then those rights would apply in court and they would be protected. So there's a tremendous coalition that's been formed to make this happen. And there was a meeting before the Stacey Brenner's committee, the committee she chairs, the Environment and Natural Resources Committee today, and there was a terrific testimony. It's an outstanding committee in terms of its membership and its progressive thinking, its awareness of what's going on. And so I'm pretty optimistic that it's going to come out with a should pass from the committee. But it's a huge lift. It has to pass 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and then pass a referendum by majority. It's not. We don't expect it to pass this year because it's a brand new thing. But we want to get anybody and everybody on board to support it. We don't have any problem here in Scarborough with our legislators. They're all going to support it. But we need to make larger efforts to convince other people in other towns, and that's not all left to the people in those towns. Naturally, we do political work that influences other politicians. So I think that's it in a nutshell. Do you want? I'm happy to take any questions.
Just one quick one. Why do you think it's not going to move forward this year? Just timing wise?
Yeah, because it's such a big new thing. People are going to have cold feet about. I mean, it's possible it would pass the legislature, but would pass it with majority. But 2/3 is a tough row to hoe in both houses. So the good thing is that there is bipartisan support for it, and there's quite a lot of it. And on that committee, there's bipartisan support. Because it's protecting individual rights, your rights to protect your property and your children and your children's right to decent lives. So it's a backstop to protect those things. And it's co-sponsored by a Republican, Bennett. And that's why don't expect it to pass this year, but who knows? And it would go on a referendum probably next November if it did. And that's an off year, so I don't know if that's a good thing or not. If there's lots of enthusiasm for it, then it's probably a very good thing. Any other questions?
Any questions?
I guess I'm thinking because of the nature of it, the national organization is called the Green Amendments for the Generations. It's all about conservation, and I think it fits within our purview. Our thing isn't really state legislation, but it certainly ought to be of great interest to us because it could be so impactful on everything we think about.
Politically, I think this year would not be good. It works better in the general election because a lot more people turn out. The folks this year, there wouldn't be a lot of staff assistants. So the folks who would turn out this year would be the people who would be against it, basically. In other words, it would be tough to get through. General election year, certainly when gubernatorial elections are happening, a lot of people get jazzed and they go out for it. They would turn out, and there would be staff to help that turn out. So I think if there's a choice, 2020 is the year. 2022.
Yeah, I think I agree. Maybe that's the thinking of the people who started the campaign. Why they're not too optimistic about this year. Maybe they're not going to try too hard. Certainly trying before the committee, though.
Anything else on that topic?
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, motion to adjourn, and all in favor of second, and then all in favor of adjourning. Yeah, great. Thanks, everyone. Andrew, thanks for joining, and everybody have a nice evening and stay safe, stay healthy. And it looks like we'll see you in April, and there's a little bit of homework, but I'm sure Jamie will capture that in the minutes and send it out.
Thank you, and thank you, April. Andrew. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Nice
all.
to see
Bye,
everyone.
all.
Hope
Thanks,
to
good
do it in
meeting.
person